Hello and welcome to the PPW Podcast, bringing you news, views, and interviews from the world of real estate online marketplaces and prop tech industries. My name is Harvey Hancock. I'll be your host today. I'm news editor at Online Marketplaces. As always, we are with the master propagandist, Simon Baker, who's got some big ideas for realestate.co.nz. Simon, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Harvey. And it's NZ, we're not American
NZ,
yet.
sorry. NZ, sorry. And joining us today, all the way from down under and then some, it is from realestate.co.nz. Sarah Wood. Sarah, how are you doing?
Good. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, my pleasure. I mean, thank you for joining us. I mean, you very kindly joined us on stage at Barcelona about a month or so back. Had a good one-to-one interview with Simon, and some businesses are worth looking at in a bit more close detail. And it's nice to extend those conversations into a few more topics that we didn't get to cover. And obviously, we can poke you a little harder on some of the ones that we did get to cover during our time in Barcelona. So, Sarah, could you give us a very quick overview of what realestate.co.nz is in the context of the New Zealand property market? And we'll sort of go on from there and see where this conversation leads us.
Sure. So New Zealand is a relatively small market, 5.5 million people. Realestate.co.nz is a extremely old platform in the context of property platforms. It's been around for 28 years. So it was predated Google, and so has obviously benefits, I think, a lot from the breadth and depth of that relationships. 28 years is a long time, especially in real estate, where, and I'm sure this is sort of similar around the world, but in New Zealand, you do have intergenerational businesses attached to real estate. So there's a lot to be said about that longevity. And we're operating in a market where there are essentially 4 different portals, but owned by 3 major players.
So you said something very interesting on stage, which is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a company that is essentially owned by 2 big sides of the real estate industry. There's the agent association ownership, which is about 50% of the company, and then the other 50% is owned by other big real estate businesses. Is that correct?
Yeah, and look, what makes it unique is we are 100% industry owned, and a lot of the portals globally have been sold. And so, well, they've certainly sold down that share of it. So I do think it's really unique, and it gives us a unique position in the market as well.
Absolutely.
So just a question around that. The ownership structure makes it unique, for sure, and we see other examples of this around the world with a strong industry ownership. For example, Wikicasa in Italy has strong industry ownership. Um, how does that benefit you? What are some of the sort of experience, some of the inside track that you get running? Do you get better access to the key principals of the major franchises? Because I know in New Zealand, the franchise players are very strong.
So what I'd actually say is no. The answer to that is no. We operate as a commercial business like any other business, and we have an independent board that runs that is part of that company structure as well. But what I'd say is the industry ownership element is actually the depth of the relationships that we have across the industry, which is actually about business owners that are agents themselves, and so I think it's that element of it. It's about that sense that we are building a fantastic product. We're there to make sure New Zealand vendors have a fantastic place to advertise their properties, but also on the flip side, we're working alongside industry to make sure that we are creating a fantastic product for them to sell back into vendors as well. So it's got
So
2 sides to it.
so how do you get canvass the industry to understand what their real needs are, and then because the interesting thing I always found with running a property portal or a real estate marketplace is that you have 2 customers. You have the consumer on one side who wants sometimes a very different outcome to what the industry wants. The industry wants branding, they want leads, they want to be at the top of the search, even if they're not the most relevant result. The consumer just wants the most relevant result. How do you balance those requirements?
That's a great question. I think, look, going back to our journey, the last 5 years, we've been heavily investing in our product. And so we've had a very user-centric focus, and we're doing more in the agent space this year. But for me, if you get on the marketplace, two-sided marketplace, if you get the users and you get them utilizing the product and the depth of that use of the product, then that long term helps the agents, and then you can create lead generation products or whatever it is off the back of that. You're generating leads for the industry. So for me, it's getting that understanding amongst the industry that we'll build a fantastic product, and with that we will serve the needs of your vendors and the agents through that. But I do think it's a bit of an education.
Okay, but if to build a fantastic product, because one of the things we chatted about at the conference was, how do you, with the rise of AI and people starting to think about search in different ways, not just a straight, type in a suburb, price range, enter, and I've got my list of properties. They're starting to say, well, there are other ways you might want to think about search, different characteristics about where I live, and then the more I as a consumer engage with a product, the more I want to have a refined list of just what's really relevant to me.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to understand that balancing act, right? You talked a lot about working with the industry and educating them and so on, but how do you do that on the consumer side too?
So, we do a lot of research, and I think there's two parts to it, right? Like I'm a really big believer in driving innovation ideas through our team. And, we've actually run full-scale innovation tournaments with 60 staff where we've actually gone through and everyone had, 3-minute pitch for their top idea that went back into the pool. And then from there, we actually have gone and researched those ideas and taken them further. So it will come up against ideas around search. But again, you've got to put it back into context of the business model that you're operating in. And then we'll go back out and test it and go, well, actually, is the market ready for that? When you look at what's happening globally, most portals are still essentially running at quite a traditional search structure in the way that they're operating. So I hear you, Simon, on the potential for it to move, and we're always looking at different opportunities or testing different things. But the market hasn't seen that shift in a significant way yet, I don't think.
Could I poke a little bit deeper on that one? You said you talked about these innovation tournaments, and you said that you're testing and researching whether these initiatives are ready for market, for example. Could you perhaps give us an example of something that maybe was or wasn't ready for the public domain, shall we say? I'm just trying to get an idea of what it is that the internal team has been working on, and what our listeners around the world might be able to sort of steal from what's coming out of your internal team.
So the two that I'll probably talk through, we did this incredible innovation tournament. It did take hours. It was a huge amount of fun. And off the back of that, we actually had sort of essentially ranked ideas of things we could take to market. And two of the ideas that we've developed out and have launched on our product, but we've done them slightly differently. And these were ideas our teams created. They didn't come off anything that anyone else was doing at the time. One of them was the listing minimize, so the ability to minimize a listing. But also the way that we were doing it was slightly different. So our ability to try and get more feedback and drive more feedback, which actually adds value back to the user, but also adds value back to the agents. Like that was an example that came up from multiple people. We tested it, but we did the research around actually, if we're going to do this, what do the agents want in terms of the information and how that's presented? And I think the way that we have delivered a product, which could potentially have that same rub that you're talking about, right? You're going through on a listing results page, you can minimize a listing down, it truncates it down and grays it out. That could be seen as a conflict. It's what users want. That's absolutely what they wanted. They wanted a clean, simple way to search and a way to filter their search. And so we were delivering that. We were delivering to that need. And then on the flip side, we were then adding additional information, looking at how we actually serve that back to agents in a way that they could then take it back to the vendors and manage those conversations and that input. So very much looking at it on both sides, but I think that's a really great example of an idea the team had, and then how we actually tested it and then delivered it in a way that made a lot of sense. The other one was price change history. So we launched that, again, quite well timed from the market standpoint, but users are wanting to know the moment there is price changes on a listing. But again, the way that we've done that, it's very, very, very tied to how the users are wanting to receive that information, but at the same time giving consideration to the agents around that, because what it's really showing is a live listing. The price is changing while our listing is live. It's not the history of a listing. And at the moment in New Zealand, we have over 30,000 homes for sale, which is up sort of 30% on where we were last year. And so you're getting a lot of pricing adjustment. And so it's a really, really valuable tool. Again, users ask for it. Or our team actually came up with the idea. We tested it and users were like, well, actually that would solve it. So it is really getting very, very close and being very clear about what your product is delivering in that user experience to make sure we're also adding value.
You were one of the first companies, I think, in the portal space to launch a named AI product. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is the name Tahu?
Yeah.
Tahu. So this was around September 2023. You launched an AI assistant, basically. Could you give us a little bit of context behind where that idea came from and what Tahu does? But also, I'd like to get a feel for what you've learned from this AI assistant in the last 12 months.
Sure. So the goal of that was to look at the amount of manual work that we were doing. So the way that listings come in, they're coming through API, but there's a lot of adjustment. There's a lot of packages that get upgraded, a lot of work that's done manually, a lot of booking that comes in a manual sense, I suppose. And so what the bot does is actually runs automation across those queues and really tries to reduce the amount of just people time solving problems that are actually quite simple because the technology or the way that the systems are working can't resolve that in the same way. So bookings are coming through email or whatever, and the bot's going through and actually picking up those emails, and then it's creating those orders in our system. And so it's just reducing that time. And so what I would say on the learning element, Harvey, is that, we really have tried to simplify and make it easy to do business with us. And that means simplifying our systems that go with it. When you put in something like a bot like this, and if you start to then add complexity back into your business, the bot stops working, or the bot needs to be reprogrammed. So it has to be, if you're going to be dedicated to simplicity as just a way that we work, then that, that's part of it. So for example, if you add pricing complexity, and then the Tahu bot can't, the Tahu bot struggles. And so then you start getting all these exception cases and it stops working the same way. So it is really, it's about keeping it really simple.
Yeah, and I guess at the end of the day, it's also really embracing the power of what AI can do, and these large language models, and how they can then start to answer questions.
Yes.
Hopefully, not hallucinate too much, as it still does quite happily. But I think if you can educate to start to answer these questions for the consumer, then the consumer has a much better experience, because at the end of the day, what the worst experience for a portal is your consumer or your visitor inquires about a property, the agent does nothing, and they sort of look at you and going, so realestate.co.nz, you don't work. And and you don't want to carry the blame. So I think keep taking this Tahu product and then just pushing it further and further with sort of an AI background.
Yeah, and we've got plans afoot of how we can do that. And I agree with you on you've just got to be a bit careful, and having structured knowledge centers and all those things are a key part of that, so that you can really control the information that's going out. But the speed is really important, right? Like, we want to have a great experience for both our agents, but also for our consumers coming to us.
Can we explore a little bit TradeMe and your competitors in the market? I'm curious how, because TradeMe is a horizontal. It's the site where I think it has more New Zealanders, so more people visit it than there are New Zealanders every month, or there used to be at least. These had these very big numbers, and they've got this sort of vertical section that competes. And how do you take on a competitor that has it has a strong market position? It's decoupled from the industry, so it doesn't have to worry about its ownership structure. it can take private. Can you take private listings, for example, or
And
do
we can
you?
take private rentals. Yeah, we've built and released that capability earlier this year.
Right. And for sale, do you take private sales?
No, we don't.
Right. So how do you think about competition in that respect? Competition for eyeballs, competition for the agent spend.
Yeah. So, like I'll say, we've been really focused, to be honest, on just building our own business. And you can spend a lot of time when you've got competitors in the market looking over your shoulder. But we have really doubled down on what is going to make a difference for us. Yes, we are going up against a platform business, but I think that being a standalone real estate portal has its advantages too. Like we have
Hmm.
a very, very dedicated, high intent audience, and so we use those pieces to leverage it as an advantage. So we really focus on that quality of inquiry or quality of lead, and quality of audience. But I think I've said this before as well about being super product focused as well. When you're a dedicated when you're a dedicated site, you're not also you're not sitting in a master site either. So our ability to change and be quite nimble is an advantage for us in the market. But we also focus on making sure we've got differentiation in our features. So, really strong new features that come to market that give a reason for consumers to also come to a dedicated site.
Okay, and I agree with you. I mean, if I look around the world at various horizontal sites which have a real estate section versus dedicated vertical plays
Mm-hmm.
as marketplaces, quite often you see higher volumes of traffic going to the horizontal play, but you see higher quality leads coming from the vertical play. How have you done any work around sort of testing that thesis that by being a focused, dedicated vertical, that you're able to generate better leads, more closable leads
Yeah.
than
Look,
a horizontal?
yeah, it's a harder one to quantify. I can say that we get a lot of anecdotal feedback to say, um, I might get less leads off your site, but that's actually the serious leads, and they're serious buyers. We do research and quantify that 30% of our audience is looking at the same listing 2 or more times in a week. And so that is another sort of way for us to really, so that's probably where we're focused, is actually a serious buyer is coming back to the site recurrently, right? They're searching the same property. And so we've sort of focused on that end of the market as a way to quantify it. And those numbers are, I think for a portal, and a portal our size, they're very strong.
Yep, and I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the things that I think many portals don't do well is to really understand uh, the convertibility of the leads they generate into
Mm.
actual buyers and actual renters. Uh, they don't do it well because unlike being Amazon, where you get the whole transaction occurring on your platform, the actual transaction bit occurs on someone else's system. Now, with your ownership structure, do you actually have any ability to get better insights, run better surveys across that user base, and have better results? Have
No,
you
I
thought
mean,
about how to do that?
I think you got to see us as running. We are owned by industry, but we're run as a separate commercial business. So
Yeah.
the short
No,
answer.
yeah, but if I was in your personally, if I was in your shoes, I would
Yeah.
be leveraging that relationship to understand the true effectiveness of what I've got, because the interesting game is it's hard for me to compete. Now, this is all my view, by the way. I'm not
Yeah,
speaking for
sure.
you. Just for clarity, it's hard for me to compete on straight up at the top of the funnel number of visits with a TradeMe, for example. It's very hard, right? Because I'd have to spend a lot of money on marketing
Mm.
to achieve that outcome. But where I can compete is I'm saying you might generate 10 leads, I might generate five, but you're closing 3 out of 5 with me and 2 out of 10. Man, I'm actually more effective. And I would be looking for angles on how to articulate that.
I do think a lot of agencies are tracking that, though, to be fair. Like they know where they're getting their leads from, and those agents know where their quality leads are coming from as well. And I'd say that because our market is smaller, that is slightly easier to see than if you're in
Hmm.
Australia.
So how does that, what leverage does that give you in pricing? When you think
Uh,
about it, if you're generating quality leads that are closing, do you have any, can you leverage that as saying, well, I want to charge you a bit more because I know I'm delivering great results for you?
I mean, I'm sure that there's always opportunities in that space. It's for us, it's really around how do we make sure we're delivering value back, and making sure that the pricing for your product is fair and represents what you're delivering back to the vendor, but also to the agents themselves.
Is it vendor paid advertising in New
It
Zealand?
is advertising, which makes New Zealand unique, along obviously with Australia and Sweden.
Yep. So given that, how do you think about pricing and price increases? Because you look at across the other side of the Tasman, you've got Australia, REA and Domain capturing very high
Mm.
returns with their vendor paid advertising packages. How do you take guidance or have a look at what they're doing and then try
But
to
look,
apply it in your market?
Well, look, we haven't tried to replicate the RA model in the New Zealand market. I'll say that. But yeah, you can look at how pricing structures work. Again, for us, we are pretty clear that we want to do be clear about what we're delivering into our own market. So, our goal would be to try and simplify things, and make it a much easier experience for both the vendor and for the agent. Because I think you can add a lot of complexity around pricing. But it doesn't necessarily make it easier for people to buy from you or transact from you per se, or to sell the product itself. But yeah, look, like all commercial businesses, we review our pricing regularly.
Okay. Um, Harvey, you got any questions? Because I'm
Yeah, I do. I like that, you're in a strong position in that you have a high intent market, right? Serious people go to the serious real estate
Mhm.
portal. We can put it that way. Um, how do you steal high intent buyers from other platforms? How do you take that market share from the people who are going to TradeMe and saying, "Look at us, look
So,
at us."
so
I'm
what
just
I
thinking very much from the consumer side right now.
Yeah, it is a consumer experience, right? Because you've got options to search, but the question is, where do you want to finish your search? When you're seriously searching, what are the tools and what's that experience that you're wanting to have? And that is where we are 100% focused. Like we double down on making sure we are improving on that. And that's where we've seen some really fantastic gains in our traffic this year. Our traffic numbers are up 30% on what they were last year. And that's us doubling down in that, making sure that the unique features that we have, are exactly what home buyers are looking for. And so it does mean that, our product is very focused in that respect. So the products that I've talked about a couple of different things we've launched. We were the first to launch instant notifications in New Zealand. So the moment a property was listed, it was sent through push notification, using Braze. So those types of tools, make a massive difference. And again, like what does consumer want? They want the listing as quickly as they can in a fast market. We did price change history. They want to know what's happening in a slower market when the prices are changing. And so it's about making sure that we are really quick and nimble with the features that match the market that we're in. But we have a very, very clear idea what our users are looking for.
okay. Actually, so I'm curious because I'd like to dive a bit deeper. I have two questions. One is you mentioned that there's a 30% increase in listings from
Correct?
last year, I think it was, right? And you've had a
Yes,
30% increase in traffic. So is
correct.
that just sort of the natural market going up?
No. Yeah, I mean, I think there is an element of the natural market, going up. I do think our numbers are higher. I'm just trying to think what our property listing numbers are up at the moment. Our traffic's up 30%. And I think the total listings, are they up 30%? They might be up 30% too, or just under.
Okay.
But yeah, I think you'll get an element of a natural lift. But then we can also see the amount of searches and the serious search element, right? So what we have seen is an uptick in the inquiry. What New Zealand's been really, affected by is the official cash rate set by the Reserve Bank here, and that has been high. What we've seen is that number has dropped. So the Reserve Bank dropped 50 basis points off that number in October, and we saw an increase in our inquiry rate of 17%. So, there actually is market movement, but so we're seeing some really good traction, if that makes sense. So all of our key metrics are up, our downloads on our app are up, users on our app, data users on our app, like all of those key things that we focus on, but certainly inquiries is a big one.
Okay. I've got another question. Can you sort of elaborate on some of the specific features that have driven the most user engagement and growth?
Instant notification has been.
Which one, sorry?
Instant notification would be the one that. And
this is the price change. So when a price changes, instant notification, or
it's the moment a listing hits the market and it gets sent through push through mobile app. So that would be one that I think is just a fantastic feature, especially in a hot market. We had an example of one of our team. The property was listed at 1:00 in the afternoon. He left work, got around, saw the property, and had an offer on it by 6 because on the same day, because the properties were just moving over so quickly. So it's about that feature fit with what's also happening from a market dynamic. I mean, instant notification would be one of those that I think's worked really well. I think listing minimize is also doing really well, and there are some other sort of. We've really focused on to double down on maps. So maps are a real point of difference for us, and something that New Zealand users really want, the ability to draw on a map. Like when you're looking at, I live in a suburb where people want to live on one side of the ridge and not on the other, but the whole suburb's got the same name. The ability to pull that up on a map and draw exactly where I want to be, and then set that up as my search. And then the moment those searches hit the market, then they're coming through to me through push and either through my mobile or through email. So again, just sort of getting really quite specific to what people are wanting. Again, when they pull up the map, they can see it's the pins, it's being able to see that those are all the new homes, that, it's all of that kind of detail that when you're really seriously searching, that you're wanting all of that information together in one place.
Okay. Can we sort of have a bit of a look, the crystal ball, have a look into the future? Because it's sort of, you're running one of these companies that has a lot of freedom to do what you want. You're an attacker in a market, so I think attackers tend to have a lot more latitude in how they think about being innovative, because they have to, and part of because there's less to lose in the outcome. How do you think about the next 3 to 5 years? What are the 2 or 3 things that you think are great opportunities for operating one of these markets?
Yeah. I'd be giving it away to my competitors if I told you too much. I do think innovation, I will say this, I think innovation is really important. It's got to be the right innovation. I think having fantastic relationships with your customers is extremely important. And by customers, I'm talking about agents and the agency community. And again, I still think you can't go wrong when you're looking really closely at what a consumer's wanting in that journey. And to the very start of this interview, we were talking about AI and search changes, and it's being able to see all those opportunities and actually time them really well, and make sure you're making the right change for the market that you're in at the right time. Looked at a range of different things which we would again use it to create differentiation for us in the market. There are lots of different things or different angles we could go down. It's just about choosing the right one and making sure it's going to have the kind of impact that we would want it to have. Okay. So, yeah.
Okay, so Harvey?
I was going to segue onto another quick topic before we get out of here, but it sounded like you had a follow-up question, Simon. So I'll defer to you.
No, you go.
Fair enough. We're hitting around the 30-minute mark, so time to let you get away, Sarah. But there is one question I want to ask you before we leave, which is, I was looking at the company website, and you've got a leadership team of 6 people, 5 of whom are women. Firstly, that's nice to see in the industry. I guess I just wanted to ask a fairly open-ended question, which is just what makes a great leadership team for a portal that's trying to push on to bigger and better things, certainly against a market leader like TradeMe.
A couple of things. I would say trust is probably one of the most crucial things. As a team, we trust each other, and we trust each other to challenge each other's ideas, to push each other, and to call each other on things. And I think trust is just a really key thing if you want a really strong leadership team. The ability to work as a group, but also to bring new ideas into the group. I think we have also got a lot of depth of knowledge. So we've had people in our business and on our leadership team that have been there for 12 years, 10, I'm sort of coming up 6. And I think that knowledge and the relationships that we hold in with our customers is another part that I think that makes it really work. I think you've got to have the balance of new people coming in and bringing new thoughts or ideas from different industries or into the mix as well. But it is also that balance of having the experience that really understand the product that we're in, and I think that helps a lot. But yeah, we do. There is a higher than average number of women on our leadership team. I think compared to other companies, it's just turns to be out to be complete coincidence. But in terms of how it's worked, it's not intentional, Harvey. It's just how it happened. When you're trying to hire the best person for the role, then that's just sometimes how it lands.
Absolutely. One other follow-up. Interesting thing you just raised there, which is finding the right people to come in. As CEO, when do you decide that I need someone with industry experience? And when do I look for someone who specifically maybe doesn't have industry experience and I want to hire in from a different sector, for example?
I'll say in a country our size, the opportunities to get people with industry experience are pretty limited. I just happened to come into a company that had those people. I do think for me, product is a really great space to get new ideas. So the person that runs our product team hasn't come from property portals, but the upside of that is she's just brought so many sort of different ways of thinking about things that I think have added value to the product that we've got and made, has helped us create unique features and really define that user experience, because they're not coming with a pre-established lens of this is how people search. She's like, well, actually, let's just test that. Hold on a minute. Why do we think that? And so I think product's a really great example. I can see there would be advantage for taking somebody that's really strong in portal product. But again, you've got a really small market. So I think that's been one space. Operations has been another place where I think, outside in ideas of, how do you run, how do you use AI to make teams more efficient? How do you scale? What kind of software? Like all of these things, operations, I think, again, you could bring someone from outside the industry and have a really great experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for the transparent answer. Simon, unless there's anything to add from your side, I think we've reached about the end of the interview.
Yeah, no, I did want one sort of observation is I think New Zealand is a relatively small place, so and it's sort of the same size as Melbourne in many ways. If you think, or Victoria,
Yes.
and you've got this incredibly competitive environment in a very small space, which is quite a unique environment. And it was 5 million people in New Zealand, basically,
Yeah.
just over 5 million. So the challenge, so the challenges are building a good team and finding great people is not as easy as if you're in, I don't know, the middle of the US where you've got a lot of people that you can select. And I think the second thing is your customer base. I mean, as you said, there's like 30,000 listings.
Yes.
Right? That's
high at the moment.
And that's considered high. You go to the US and it's 300 or 400,000. It's like or materially more than that. Probably a million listings. I don't know the number off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So it makes life very hard to compete in that environment. And what you're doing in that environment is an incredibly great job, I think. When you've got a tough environment, you've got this interesting challenge of a massive and TradeMe is massive because it's everywhere and everyone in New Zealand uses it for something. at some point in time, as sort of this, you're up against, and you've got sort of industry ownership on one side, you've got agents on the other side that you're trying to get to pay a lot of money, but you've got to balance these things out. So I think, Sarah, you guys are doing a fantastic job in what is a challenging environment. And by the way, everything you're doing is the same stuff that Homes.com in the US is doing, or a Rightmove is doing, but they're just doing it with add probably 3 extra zeros at the end of your budget.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm proud of what we've delivered for a relatively small team. I think the changes we've made in the product's been pretty incredible, and the growth that we've had in terms of adoption of our product is really impressive too. So thank you. I think you've done a great job.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
So thank you. And thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
No problem.
Absolutely. Right then. Well, we'll call it a day there. One quick announcement from us. I should have put it at the top of the show, but I forgot because it was still so early in the morning, Simon. We had an interesting podcast with Brian Boero from 1000 Watt, who's, by the time you see this, that podcast should already be live. Should definitely check it out. Very interesting guy, and a lot of great stuff coming out of the US, certainly in terms of the survivability of the MLS. Very interesting conversation on that topic. We've uploaded all our presentations from the Barcelona conference. They should be available very, very soon. And Simon,
for those who attended, just clear that for those who attended.
Only for those who attended. There you have it.
Yes. If you want to hear what everyone has to say, including Sarah's up on stage, you actually have to either come to the conference or at least pay for the ticket, and you can look at the conference afterwards.
And speaking of which, I guess that gives us one chance to do a very quick pitch for our upcoming conferences, Simon.
Two conferences coming up, one in mid-March in Bangkok, and Sarah, I suggest you come up for that. You'll thoroughly enjoy it. It has a more of an Asia-Pacific flavor to it, and super interesting speakers around, probably a bit more edgy topics than Europe, because it's a less stable markets, and so people are being far more innovative, far more edgy in what they do, and then that's coming up in March in Bangkok, and then we have a conference. Our European conference is now coming up in 11 months. I never thought I'd be saying 11 months, but in October 2025 we'll be back in Madrid, where I am today actually, and I hope everyone can come to that as well. Tickets are on sale for both. If you can't find them online, send me an email at simon@onlinemarketplaces.com and I'll point you in the right direction.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Right then, we'll call it a day there. So thank you very much, Sarah Wood.
Thank you.
And it's going to be goodbye from Simon Baker.
And it's goodbye from him.
And it's going to be goodbye from me. Thanks very much for listening, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye.